So I think, my message this morning, and what I hope can be useful context for the next couple of days, is to share a few elements of what is in the pipeline at EU level around skills and learning in the next semester. As Ernst, you said in your introduction, I think it's obviously a challenging time since we last met. The world has shifted on its axis in a way that none of us could see coming. But it's also really a time of opportunities. And I think certainly I feel from my perspective in the Commission team that in the next semester, there is a chance for a new momentum around the topic of learning in whatever environment, whatever shape or form. That's partly on the policy front, and I'll say a few words about that in a moment. And it's partly on the financial front, because some of you will have seen last week, I'm sure, the Commission put forward its proposal for a revised 7-year budget, as well as a new financial instrument, the so-called Next Generation EU. So the clue is in the name. There's a lot of money in there for young people, and that, of course, includes learning, skilling, and employment support. So I would say that's one feeling emerging from the crisis of the last few months, that as well as being a frankly grim situation for many people on the labour market and in the community, there are also opportunities opening up for some fresh thinking, and supported, if possible, by some smart investment. So at EU level, you'll see in the pipeline in the next few weeks and months, ideas becoming more concrete around that. But certainly at the heart of our work as a community together, the preoccupation with learning, I think there are reasons to be relatively optimistic about that. I won't spend a lot of time on the statistics. I'm sure in your own home situations, you will be observing that the situation on the labour market and also in learning environments. But I think it's interesting to turn the clock back 1 year when we started inside my team to reflect a bit deeper and to draft some policy proposals on skills at a time basically where in most member states, in many regions, the picture was quite a bright one in terms of employment. A lot of employers were complaining that what was holding back their investments and their growth was skills gaps. They couldn't find people with the right skills. Very, very high employment in some regions, difficult for them to reach out and recruit the people that they needed. We've now really, as I say, shifted on the axis. On average, across all economic sectors this year, activity has gone down by about 30%. In the hotel and catering sector, it has gone down by 70%. Aviation, unsurprisingly, leads the way in the decline in activity, 80% fall in their activity. Youth unemployment predicted to get to up to 25% in some parts of Europe. So it's almost looking back to the crisis that we experienced in 2008 and all the implications that had for young people's learning and employability. And I think one question, update of the skills agenda. So the 2016 skills agenda, I think most of you will be well familiar with that, is let's say, ready for a refresh, to look at what has been achieved so far, what can we do more in the next years to come. So that at the moment is scheduled to be adopted by the Commissioners on the 8th of July. Also in the second semester then, we're looking out for an update of the Digital Education Action Plan, and I think that is very close to some of the topics of the next couple of days. How and where can people update and upgrade their digital skills? Also in the second semester, we would expect to be seeing a proposal on the European education area, taking to the next chapter of cooperation on that. And of course, not to mention, hopefully, the positive conclusion of negotiations on the next generation of the Erasmus programme, which of course you're all very very familiar with. So as I say, a critical mass of activity coming up on the policy and on the financial front in the next semester. So perhaps just the 5 ideas and the strands of work that I wanted to add as context to your discussions in the next couple of days. Firstly, the work around skills intelligence, labour market and skills intelligence. What more, different and better can we do at European, national, regional level? On the one hand, to generate this skills intelligence, and perhaps even more importantly, to use it, to tailor it to the needs of people who need that type of information to guide their decisions, whether it's spending decisions or how they invest their time in learning. And many of you, notably the Euroguidance colleagues, will be very, very familiar with developments in your national context. This is a field where technology helps us. Big data analysis is opening up all sorts of possibilities in terms of generating and analysing data in different ways. I think the next chapter of reflection really is needed on how to turn that into something usable and meaningful for the individual. So we would like to start or deepen the work that's going on that, and linked, of course, directly then to questions around guidance. How do people access guidance in person, online, at which moments throughout their learning pathways and their lives? And also, how does that link up to validation? So we have just concluded an evaluation of the Council recommendation on validation, and we will report to Council on that at the same time as the skills agenda in a few weeks' time. And the basic message, very short message coming from that, is that across Europe, there is progress to be seen on validation in the last 8 years in every single country. But it's fair to say, really, in no country is validation yet the norm for the individual. So it hasn't yet really matured to the stage of becoming an integral, normal, fully functioning part of the learning and skills landscape. So the question for us collectively is, what can we do to change that and take it to the next level? So skills intelligence, guidance, validation, one big field of work, and perhaps more vital than ever in the context of the crisis, where millions of people are being propelled into transitions, labour market transitions, learning transitions that they had not expected to find themselves in. Second point is, again, linked to flexible and individual learning pathways, and that is work around the so-called micro-credentials, so ways of capturing learning experiences typically shorter than a full qualification. A lot of experience in the higher education field on that front, notably around MOOCs, the massive open online courses, but not only, also in vocational provision, in the labour market, private provision of that type of recognition of learning. Diversity is great, but it is also a challenge for trust and understanding, and this is where at EU level we think there is definitely value to be had in looking together at building that sort of trust in different forms of micro-credentials to encourage take-up by individuals, to encourage take-up by employers also. Third point to mention that we would like to build up some more work on is a so-called pact for skills. So this is building on experiences like the Alliance for Apprenticeships, the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, some of you will know all about. What can we do to facilitate public-private partnerships? Also in those partnerships to use funding in the most strategic way possible. If I look at it from a labour market training perspective, one big question, of course, is how to make sure that learners and staff in small and medium enterprises are not falling by the wayside here. So it's interesting, we think, to look at a whole value chain from the large enterprises to the SMEs down to the micro enterprises. what can we do collectively in that type of working and learning environment to make sure that also in the smaller companies, people are having the chance to build their skills at all ages and stages. So in November, the German presidency colleagues, incoming German presidency, getting organised for the Vocational Skills Week in the second week of November. And our ambition is to launch then a first edition of this Pact for Skills with a number of public and private partners. Fourth quick point to mention is on the issue of quite simply how to make it easier, smoother for adults to continue building their skills throughout life, and exploring the idea of an individual learning account. In some countries, notably France, there's quite some experience with this type of model. But the basic idea being how, with either financial credits or time credits, plus access to guidance and validation, plus access to adequate learning opportunities, how is it possible to encourage the uptake of skilling and learning throughout life? And we think that type of model can be an interesting one to explore. So what you won't see in the second semester is a ready-made proposal at EU level on individual learning accounts. It's far too complex a landscape for that. But we would like to start some reflection to launch an impact assessment and some further discussion already later this year. And finally, and very close to my heart and that of my team, is the launch of the new Europass, also now scheduled for the 8th of July. Many of you, the Europass and Euroguidance colleagues especially, will be closely involved with making that happen. And a big thanks to you for all your work already on that front. For those of you who are a little bit more distant from the work on that, then the idea is to update the current Europass, which has around 2 million visits a month. So it's not a small site in EU terms. To make available on the new portal an updated e-portfolio. So let's say the next generation of the Europass CV, a much more sophisticated user experience in the form of an e-portfolio. People can record their skills, tailor their CVs for different purposes, decide with whom to share them. Also to link people up with job opportunities, and they come then, of course, directly from Eures, so a good synergy between the two portals, and also to link people up with learning opportunities. And here is where, of course, the success is in the hands of member states, and feeding those learning opportunities into the portal is something for member states to contribute. For the launch version, I think we have around 12 or 14 member states who are ready to do that. Others are following close behind. So the launch version will not cover all Europass countries immediately, but we hope by the end of the year to have a fuller set of learning opportunities for the user. And we will be looking really with your help as much outreach as possible and communication as possible to Europass users on what is new, what is helpful for them in the new tool. So that's just a few of the fields, let's say, in the wider skills context in the next few months that we would like to be taking forward at policy and practical level with your help. And I think as a last word, I know that you're going to turn now in the next 2 days to the specific issue of inclusiveness in future Erasmus. And as Ernst, you said in introduction, in a way, there's never been a better time to do so, because really the last few months have only amplified what we know are the structural challenges around accessing skilling and learning opportunities. The digital divide, I think, is clearer than ever, and I'm sure as research results come through in the next few months, there'll be some very thought-provoking findings, whether it's in geographic terms across the Union or in socio-economic terms. Very, very striking differences in how people have been able to work, to learn, and to socially interact in this phase. So it's an exciting time to be thinking about this. I think the momentum is there, and I hope that you have really fruitful virtual discussions in the next couple of days, and can only say from the Commission point of view, of course, looking forward to the results and ready to build that in as much as we can to future programme implementation. And of course, if there's time now and the technology allows, very happy to hear comments or questions or remarks. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Alison, so much for your presentation. We do actually have 2 questions right now popping up. So I would like to pass on the first question from Ellen, Euroguidance Norway. Thank you for the presentation. Can you elaborate some more on the role of guidance, especially Euroguidance in the new Erasmus Plus period?
Yes, thank you. So I think on the role of guidance, what is interesting at the moment, and the crisis again has put a spotlight on that, is different ways of on the one hand, generating guidance. So this is the type of skills intelligence work that I was mentioning, and also accessing guidance, new technologies, new possibilities for people either remotely or in person to access tailored guidance. We've just published a study on that. Some of you have been closely involved in contributing to it. So I think there's an opportunity also with the Euroguidance colleagues to think about implications for your work in the next programme period around that. I know that some of my colleagues were able to join the last meeting and discussion on this, and to start mapping out learnings from the last few years and new opportunities for cooperation. I think we can't preempt obviously funding amounts yet in the new programme, but certainly from the Commission perspective, and also as a consequence of this, the last few months, the need for tailored guidance, however it's delivered, but tailored guidance is clearer than ever. So any proposals that the Euroguidance family has to share on that as we work together to shape work plans for the next few years will be very timely in the early autumn.
Thank you. Another question comes in from Ilse from Euroguidance Latvia. How are you planning to coordinate developments in learning and sectoral development? Increased digitalization in the economy can increase the skills gaps.
Yeah, thank you, Ilse. I mean, I think there's maybe 2 questions there. One, as you say, indeed, the rapid growth in the need for digital skills. If we don't address that well at all levels of education and training, then indeed the skills gaps, that's the risk, and it's what we have seen in some regions happening in the last few months. So I think there will be one very clear priority to digital skilling in the months to come. On the sectoral level, then, if you are referring to economic sectors rather than sectors of education and training, there I think we put the ball very much in the court of the sectors themselves. It's hard to compare, say, the hotel and catering sector to transport or aviation. So what we try to do is put tools at their disposal to support richer skills intelligence, allowing then tailored training development and then roll out across the sector. And I think one message that we hear, and I'm sure you too, from the economic sectoral players is they are very keen to really look at the lifelong learning chain. So I think we tend to kind of equate the economic sector operators, they must be thinking about that. Well, not only, because their message to us is very, very clear that it starts really with the preschool and goes to the end of, in their terms, of course, in the labour market, the end of working life. In our terms, further than that. But interesting to know that they are certainly in our context with them, they don't take a limited view. It really is, it's the lifelong learning spectrum that they're calling on all of us to get right from cradle to grave. And that, I think, is refreshing and promising for those of us who are looking at exactly that type of, holistic learning environment.
Thank you. We have a few more questions, but unfortunately, as the time is moving forward, I would like to pass one last question to you. It is from Karin, Euroguidance Netherlands. Is there a place where we can find additional information about the different initiatives, such as the impact assessment concerning learning accounts and the path for skills with public-private partners?
Mm-hmm. So there's, before the 8th of July and the skills agenda adoption, there's not a lot of information about that in the public domain. I would say 8th of July is the start line for a bit more detail on all of that. So of course, as soon as we have some materials to share, your networks will be, a first port of call on that, because here, as ever, we rely very much also on your stakeholder outreach capacity to spread the word on these consultations and on these initiatives. So as soon as there is a bit more material to share, please be assured that we will be reaching out to all of your networks on that.
Thank you so much, Alison, also for taking the time to answer the questions.